Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to a brand new video here today. And in today's video, we're discussing F1 2020, next year's game from Codemasters there. Obviously, the game came out earlier this year in June, so I expect hopefully 2020 to come out in June again, or even earlier perhaps. And that means, to that effect, if the game is even just going to come out in June again, end of June, it means that at this point of the year now, they're already working on next year's game. They're already probably laying down big foundation building blocks of the game, and starting to flesh things out if I just base it off previous experience of having tested F1 2016 and 17 back in the day, of when they were and the kind of timeline things of how it all works over a year. So now I think is the perfect time to start talking about game ideas, brand new game ideas for the next year's game. We've done some videos about improvements and fixes to this year's game, F1 2019, but those are fixes. Those are kind of things that are already there and need to be improved upon, but these are new ideas, new things that we want to see added into the game. But let's get into this with number one. The first idea that I want to see in F1 2020 career mode is a proper pre-season brought back into the game. And in my opinion, this would work so much better now because you've got the driver transfers, because now it's a chance for you to show off the driver transfers in a much more presented manner instead of just a simple little email that's tucked away. Obviously, I know they probably tucked it away for good reason, because they didn't actually announce driver transfers as a feature. They kind of just put it in without any of the teams knowing, and then they just thought, okay, cool, they've already got it in, we can't ask them to remove them. So basically, they did it very underhandedly this year, but now that they've got it in for next year's game, they may as well make a big fuss about it and actually try and work it into a lot more of the game, basically, in terms of presentation aspects of pre-season. You can have like pre-season, lifting off the covers of the car, showing off your new driver lineup in terms of like a cutscene or whatnot, and then the actual pre-season itself, we've mentioned it before, there's been plenty of different kind of ways to tackle how you'd go about pre-season, but the best way that I've thought up really is this whole thing about, being able to maybe sandbag a little bit and say things to the press about how your pre-season has gone effectively. Yeah, you can do maybe some programs where you do some, practice programs essentially that are kind of similar, but pre-season, more kind of installation sort of programs, or kind of checking the cars working, all kind of areas of the ERS and whatnot, and the engine mapping modes. But you could then go on to have these presses after you've done the testing, and based off your answers, that could affect the world around you, Formula One, the other teams. Let's take this year for example. Mercedes definitely sandbagged a little bit in pre-season, and Ferrari, we don't know what they really did, but their car was mega in pre-season, or looked it, and then it just didn't show up at this running Grand Prix. Whether they had to turn down their engine and tweak some things, we will never know fully. But Mercedes definitely also had a bit of sandbagging in there, I guess. Maybe just didn't perform as they wanted to. But that was basically a big curveball for everyone, and so that might have affected how teams went into the season and how they thought. Now, for the game, an interesting way to play this is if you are the team that wants to sandbag maybe, and you talk about in a presser about, yeah, it's not been a great pre-season, we're very off the pace, we're going to have to work quite hard, and it looks like our rivals Mercedes and Red Bull are looking very, very, very strong. Basically, that could then signal to Red Bull and Mercedes that, okay, we've got one up on Ferrari here, so let's not spend as much in this kind of running bar pre-season on the R&D chart. And so what we could have is, you have the R&D graph that we have right now. So instead of all the concrete lines in pre-season, you have these maybe zones, which are kind of basically thicker lines, but they're kind of a little bit more opacity. The opacity's toned down a little bit, and it's basically a little zone of where the game thinks the team is after pre-season, basically. And then you have a little dotted kind of potential line of trajectory of where the team could go to this running Grand Prix. And you could change the elevation of that potential depending on how you play the press conference and how you play off how your team's done. You could play off your rivals and make them think, oh, they can relax, they don't need to do as much, so their potential line goes down a little bit rather than where it was before, because you've thrown them off. You've kind of made it look like, oh, you don't need to work as hard, we're really off the pace here. It might also backfire though. That could actually equally just maybe make them want to work even harder to gain an even bigger advantage. So it could be a very random generated system to see what actually swings it and what works out, but it would just make everything so much more alive in pre-season, a lot more fluid in that kind of way of the unknown, because it's unfortunately, from one season to another especially, it's very, quick. There's no real fanfare about going from one season to the other, and we've said this now for 3 years, so it really needs to happen. That there needs to be something bigger going in winter testing, or, at the end of the season, basically, to make it feel like a big difference in the game, basically. And with transfers as well, like I said with the presentation, it'd be a big opportunity to actually make it special, basically. I don't want to get to season 8 and think, oh, I've just rattled through it, yeah? I've got to season, from season 7 to 8, basically there's no one cares. Like, the game doesn't care. I've literally just clicked a loading screen, and that's been it. Now, I think there should be some actual chunky stuff between between seasons to make sure it actually feels like an actual progression of time and a different year of racing, essentially. Number 2 are going to be more complex engine modes and party mode available in the race. We've said it this year before about Ferrari having a much better qualifying mode, and they can get some extra tenths in quali, and they're not able to use that though in the race. And the same thing with Mercedes. They've also talked about sometimes having to not use certain modes just for the case of, reliability and whatnot. And the same with Red Bull. Well, Honda only just got a party mode. Honda only just got a party mode in the recent 2 years, and the same with Renault. Renault only got a party mode, or essentially a qualifying boost mode, this year, I believe it was. I'm not too sure completely, but I'm pretty sure last year that was something that Hulkenberg was complaining about, the fact that Renault don't have an extra gear to find in quali with their engine modes. So it'd be great to actually have these different engine mappings, maybe part of R&D, have a fourth branch of the engine side. We have ERS, we have fuel, engine power, maybe have a fourth R&D kind of path of engine, which is the electronics of the engine mapping, because electronics play a huge part in these power systems now. They're not, engines per se, they're power units, this is the technical term, because they are all a part of it. The electrical systems of the ERS is part of it, and all the gizmos and the computer behind the engine is part of it. We talked about here earlier on this year at Silverstone that Verstappen's Red Bull was actually producing so much more downforce with the upgrades Red Bull bought that the engine was lagging behind the car itself. Like, Verstappen would nail down the throttle, and the computer system in the Honda engine could not compute the fact he wanted to go full throttle so early on, and so it was lagging and essentially giving him turbo lag in a kind of way, in essence. And he complained about that a lot throughout the entire race, and we found out about it after the race, that this was an issue of the electronic system having to relearn how quick the car can go around the track. So it'd be great to have a bit more of that technicality in, especially for me personally, myself. I love that technical side of the sport, so it'd be great to actually have that in the game. Of course, maybe it might put off some casual players of the game, but it could be something you could maybe switch off, maybe if you don't want to. But if you do want it, can it get really into the nitty-gritty of the engine side of things and the mapping of it, because mappings are crucial, basically. You have different maps for practice, different maps for longer stints, maybe different maps for quali, different maps for overtaking, and I feel like you have yet the different little ERS modes, but I think there should be a bigger, kind of more complex system of the entire engine, the way it works, along with the fuel and the ERS in tandem, rather than as two separate entities. And just simple things of allowing us to have that maximum fuel mode in the race, and let us pay the penalty if we use maximum fuel mode too much. Then we could run out of fuel for the entire race. That's our fault, and that's on us to manage that. Number 3 is going to be a more complex damage system. This year alone, we've seen so much talk about floors being damaged and sides of barge boards maybe being touched and whatnot, and just other parts of the car, apart from the front wing, being broken or damaged and slowing down the cars. Good case in point, Belgium Grand Prix. Raikkonen has some floor damage. Verstappen had suspension damage. We've got to a point now where I think we've had the same damage model now for about 3-4 years, and the excuse of the teams don't like it is not good enough in a way now, because you did driver transfers. You said the teams probably wouldn't like driver transfers. You just did it anyway. I think there should be a case of just doing it anyway. It doesn't have to be cosmetic, I think I don't know. I don't want to speak for everyone here watching the video, but personally for me, I would be okay with it not being the visual damage, but if I could actually physically have the physics of the damage happen to me, I would be okay with that, just for the fact of actually having that damage as a factor in the race. I want there be able to be a yellow floor because someone's whacked my floor, like we've gone side by side a bit too eagerly, I guess, or aggressive. Their front right tyres smashed my left rear part of the floor, and there's a bit of damage. Oh, okay, don't visually show it then, but just tell me in the heads-up display there's some damage to the floor, so you might have a bit more of a loose rear end. Same thing with suspension, or you bang tyres a little bit too hard, so the suspension gets kicked in a little bit more, and so the suspension starts to have a damage, so your steering column could go a little bit wonky. So that'd be great, because we see in other racing games that your steering column and rack can get wonky. So how awesome would it be to have scenarios in your career mode and stuff where you have to trundle through to the end of the Grand Prix with a bent steering, where you have to literally turn a little bit 5 degrees right to keep the car in a straight line because the suspension arms and the driving kind of system is completely broken there. It'd be great to have that kind of complex systems in the game and just add that extra spice for you as a player, because that is part and parcel of the drama of Formula One. You have these things of, it's really, unfortunate when they happen, and if you're supporting drivers, it's really gut-wrenching, but that is part of the sport, so it should be part of the video game experience, I think, in career mode as well. Number 4 are going to be more fluid AI stats and form. This is a big one that I talked about a lot last year, and I think it makes even more sense now with driver transfers. Like, a lot of these just make more sense now that we have these driver transfers coming in, because fluid AI stats and form is my idea of over 10 seasons, the stats and the speed of individual AI of like Hamilton, Vettel, compared to maybe Leclerc or Verstappen or Gasly or whatnot. I think they need to be a bit more fluid and changeable. You know, Hamilton's pace as an AI driver stays the same for all 10 seasons. And we've talked about, well, we know that in driver transfers for F1 2019, the general pattern is that the higher up drivers will start to move to lower down teams once their teams start performing worse, and obviously the lower teams maybe start improving themselves. And so we see, you know, like in my career mode, you got Vettel in Williams, obviously, and that's a big move there. But obviously, over the years, you would expect someone like Vettel, you expect any driver, really. I mean, most drivers will lose a bit of their ability. Not maybe a lot, maybe just a little bit, because you got the case of, you know, Raikkonen still doing very, very well. Obviously, Hamilton's getting up there in terms of age, and he's still smashing it. Alonso was always still a great driver, even at his age as well. But I think it makes sense for the video game, over the years, that the kind of more junior drivers coming up the ranks of the driver transfers, their AI stats get improved. And the higher up ones that start to higher up and going lower teams will start to deteriorate a little bit, and they can't drag up a Williams as far as, you know, as far as you don't think is possible, basically. And also have form in there, because I think form is massive. You know, if you're a driver in form, 2 wins in the trot, come to the next race, let's say Verstappen, okay? I don't know what the AI stats are in the actual game, but let's say Verstappen's a little bit lower than Hamilton. He's now won 2 races in a row, Verstappen has, so Verstappen's AI, going to that 3rd race now, his AI is going to be performing better than Hamilton's on paper. If you ignore the car, just the AI driver is going to be performing better than Hamilton on paper, because he's got 2 wins in a row, and Hamilton's had, I don't know, 2 shocking races, and so his form's a little bit dipped. That would be great to see, because then you would generally see so many different outcomes in races, and just that difference of, you know, it's not just Merc dominating the entire time, it's not just Red Bull dominating the entire, it's not just the top teams dominating the entire time. There is going to be these little, like, tiny little nuances of, oh, the car doesn't suit the track, and the driver is also not driving as amazingly as possible, and so that just changes things up and makes it a bit more realistic, because drivers can have off days, and drivers can be absolutely on it like a car bonnet sometimes, and it does happen. So it'd be great to see, especially over the course. It would give you that sense of progression for sure over 10 seasons. Number 5 is going to be a much better reliability system, something I've been banging on about now for about 2 years, and so we're back again because we need to keep on saying it, because it is an important point. A better reliability system. The player needs to suffer more reliability issues. On this year's game, F1 2019, I feel like they've tweaked it, and the AI don't get as many issues. I've at least noticed that. I don't think they do get as many issues as they did in 2018 and 2017, but I'd rather have them still have the same number of issues they did in last year's game, 2018, and I'll just have the player have reliability issues. Or, you know, I've said it many, many times, just allow us to have a switch that says, yes, I want random failures. So if I have a failure on the last lap of the Grand Prix, like Lando Norris, that is the price I've paid for wanting full realism and experience on F1 2020 in the career mode. Equally so, if you don't want to do that, we've mentioned it before, do a Motorsport Manager style system where the parts can wear out, and you can do upgrades on the kind of wear rate in the red zone of parts, and you can continue to push red zone parts, and basically just make it more intricate in terms of, instead of just applying reliability upgrades across the board, make them specific to parts. And so we can work on the specific parts, see the red zone of parts, see where we are in terms of reliability, and know that if I take the risk, then it may just go kaput. Obviously, on this year's game and the last 2 years of games, you only really get that if you are someone like me and you forget to check your R&D and check the engine thing, and you go into it with like a 80% worn gearbox, then you're just a little bit of a numpty, aren't you? But I want to see a proper kind of system where you can actually work on the reliability, and you can actually take that risk maybe if you want, and then just, yeah, have the random failures. I mean, I just think it needs to be a thing, to be honest. Number 6, and this is going to be very fitting for this year's game, F1 2019, because the AI are so OP at starts. Practice starts. Maybe needs to be a thing in practice, and needs to be part of the R&D, you know? Maybe the clutch system could be part of it. That should be a chassis side of the car. You know, we have brakes in the chassis side, so why not clutch in the chassis side? A better clutch upgrade means you get better starts, because if we are gonna maintain that the AI have these OP starts now from F1 2019 into 2020, this needs to happen. You need to have clutch upgrades then to give the players the ability to have better starts, because at the moment, Cody's have been completely blank silent about everything. I actually sent them a DM earlier this week. They've not replied yet. Obviously, I know they're busy doing stuff with F1 esports, but they need to actually respond to the entire community. Everyone's been saying it. The AI are too good at starts. They're too good at traction a lot of the time, especially in wet conditions. And it's just something, if it's going to stay that way for 2020, then you need to give us stuff like R&D clutch stuff to make the starts better for the player, so that when you do apply the throttle, the car kicks in a little bit more, grips up a little bit more, and again, that just gives you a very easy way to add more stuff into the game, Codies. More stuff to do in the R&D. Basically, just, you know, work off your own failings, you know? Yeah, okay, your AI a little bit weird on the race starts, okay, but use that in a positive way to then add more into the game then, by adding on the clutch system into the R&D, and give us more stuff to do in the career mode, basically. Number 7, a post-season test. So this is very much like, almost like the pre-season one, but a post-season test, like the young drivers test in Abu Dhabi. I think if they expand upon, I hope they expand upon on the F2 story mode in next year's game, and actually have a full F2 career maybe built into that, and a whole system of maybe where the F2 drivers can transfer up into F1, that'd be amazing. The post-season young drivers test at Abu Dhabi would be perfect then to have some F2 names that you've not, that maybe some of you that don't follow F2 maybe, obviously not everyone does, but if you do, then obviously you'll know them, but if you don't, you won't, and maybe see some of those unknown names in F1 cars in this post-season test. You yourself can do post-season tests with the team you're with, or maybe the team you're going to. That might be another way to present driver transfers as well, is have the drivers that are transferring test for their brand new teams in Abu Dhabi, based in this post-season test, and then you can get that feel and flavour of the new grid before you get to the next year's season. Like, you can say, oh, okay, so I'm going to have this guy in this team, this guy in this team. That's pretty cool. Can I already get used to him in that car and stuff like that? And also you can work on, if you're going to stay with the same team, or if you're the new team, you can start to already build upon on R&D points and whatnot on that postseason, rather than just giving us a random 5,000 points in an email for signing for the team. Allow us to affect how much R&D we get for the next season, and, you know, more effort we put, the more we get back basically for next year, for the next season of career mode. And finally, number 8, team orders, and just more interaction with your teammate. I want to see interaction of the teammate between setups, maybe the ability to maybe go, oh, can I copy my teammate's setup? I know the AI don't actually have too many changes in their setups. They pretty much run default and maybe like 1 or 2 clicks on the front wing and whatnot, but it'd be cool to like overhaul the system of having the AI actually use proper setups maybe, or just not bonkers ones, but just kind of maybe a few changes in every section of the setup menu. And then if you're a more casual player, you can go, I'm going to borrow my teammate's setup here, but you can only do that if you have a good relationship with your teammate in the rivalry kind of system, if you will. If you don't have a good relationship, if you're like the number 1 driver, he's the number 2 driver, and you have that kind of, you know, clashing of heads, you can't borrow his setup and he can't borrow yours, basically. And also in the race, like I said, team orders would be absolutely amazing. We've seen so many times already over the last 2 years now, team orders are coming more of a useful thing, especially if you're in the top teams, you know, Ferrari, Mercedes, you know, they need to use team orders sometimes to play off in one another, to attack each other, to, you know, defend against, you know, rivals, you know, Merc v Ferrari. So it'd be great to be able to tell my teammate, can you let me buy, or tell my engineer, can you tell him to let me buy, or I'll tell him I will let him buy, or, you know, even things like pit stops, just saying, can you make him pit now, because I want to continue on for 2 more laps, rather than me continuing on for 2 laps, and therefore forcing my teammate to continue on for 2 laps, or double stack with me, God forbid, on the same lap that I choose. I should be able to tell my teammate, no, I want to pit this lap now, mate, 1 lap later, so either you come in early now and get my pit stop window, or you go 1 lap later, but don't come in on the same lap, because then you'll screw yourself. That system is very, very annoying every time it happens. You know, every time you see your teammate coming on the same lap as you, when you've, you know, gone away from the default strategy that you planned before the race started, it's so painful to always see that. Basically, you've just screwed over your entire team's race, your teammate's race, and he's not going to be seen ever again in your entire race now for the rest of it. So yeah, team orders, more team interaction, that kind of sense. You know, team interaction with your engineers, maybe suggesting setup work and whatnot, and suggesting maybe which way to go in the R&D and stuff like that, and just having more of a camaraderie kind of interaction with your team, basically, and having it feel like you're actually a part of a well-oiled machine that is a Formula 1 team of, you know, 1,000 staff and whatnot. So yeah, I think that video has gone on actually a lot longer than I thought it would do, but you can just clearly see how passionate I am about these kind of game ideas, and how much my mind wanders in terms of how cool ideas could be for the F1 game. So guys, if you do agree with a lot of those ones, then be sure to smash the like button. Like I said, let me know what ideas you guys are having, and we'll make another video maybe a little bit later on if there are enough ideas from you guys, new ones that we can present for F1 2020. If you are new around here, do subscribe for weekly Formula 1 content. I've been aarava. Hope you enjoyed today. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.